The polished exterior. Henry believed he had mastered the art of duality. By day, he was the charming, sharp-suited entrepreneur whose success was the envy of many. His office, perched high in the heart of the city, exuded luxury. A gleaming desk, framed accolades on the walls, and the subtle hum of power beneath every conversation. He was the man others aspired to emulate. But by night, a shadow hung over his otherwise luminous life. Megan, his wife of 15 years, no longer fit into the image he wanted to project. She was a quiet woman, kind to a fault, with no desire for the limelight that Henry increasingly craved. To him, she was like a relic of his simpler past, a past he had worked so hard to outgrow. Megan had been there when Henry was just a man with dreams and ambition. She'd sacrificed for him, cheered him on, and believed in him even when he doubted himself. But as Henry climbed the ladder of success, his vision shifted. He began to see Megan not as a partner, but as an obstacle. She wasn't the glamorous, sophisticated woman he wanted on his arm at high-profile events. He began attending these events alone, or so Megan thought. Enter Phoebe. It was at one such event that Henry met Phoebe, a strikingly beautiful and confident woman who thrived in the world of wealth and grandeur. Her charm was magnetic, and Henry quickly became enamored. To him, Phoebe represented everything Megan lacked: glamour, sophistication, and a flair for captivating an audience. Phoebe became Henry's secret weapon. He began taking her to business meetings and social gatherings, presenting her as his partner. She dazzled his associates and clients, making Henry feel untouchable. Together, they were the epitome of success, or so he believed. Meanwhile, Megan noticed the cracks forming in their marriage. The late-night meetings, the sudden business trips, and the way Henry had become distant. She didn't confront him, though. Instead, she quietly observed, her heart heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. The perfect plan. One day, Henry received news of an extraordinary opportunity: a meeting with a group of influential foreign investors. This wasn't just any deal. It was the kind that could elevate his company to global prominence. But Henry knew this wasn't just about numbers and projections. The investors would need to see the perfect image of success and stability. Henry didn't even consider taking Megan. In his mind, she would embarrass him with her modesty and lack of polish. Instead, he decided Phoebe would accompany him. Confident and beautiful, she would charm the investors and seal the deal. At dinner that evening, Henry told Megan about the trip. "I'll be gone for a couple of days for an important meeting," he said casually. Megan, as always, responded with quiet support. "I hope it goes well," she said with a small smile. But her eyes lingered on him a moment longer than usual, as if searching for something beneath his carefully crafted facade. The meeting. On the day of the trip, Henry and Phoebe arrived at the luxurious hotel where the meeting was to take place. Phoebe turned heads as they entered, her elegance drawing admiration from everyone in the room. Henry felt a swell of pride. This was exactly the impression he wanted to make. The investors, 2 men and a woman, were already seated when Henry and Phoebe arrived. The female investor, in particular, exuded an air of authority. She was impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Henry introduced Phoebe as his wife. The female investor raised an eyebrow, but said nothing, her expression unreadable. Henry launched into his presentation, confident that he had the investor's attention. He presented charts and graphs, painting a picture of a company on the brink of a groundbreaking transformation. But as the meeting progressed, Henry began to notice something unusual. The female investor seemed less interested in his presentation and more focused on him and Phoebe. Her questions were pointed, her gaze sharp, and there was a subtle tension in the room that Henry couldn't quite place. The reveal. As Henry wrapped up his presentation, the female investor leaned forward, her piercing eyes fixed on him. "Mr. Henry," she said in a measured tone, "your vision is impressive, but success isn't built on appearances alone. It's built on integrity, partnership, and trust." Her words hit Henry like a bolt of lightning. Before he could respond, she removed her sunglasses, revealing a face that was strikingly familiar. It was Megan. Henry froze, his mind racing. Megan? How was this possible? She had been at home just days ago, wishing him well on his trip. But now, here she was, sitting across from him as one of the investors. Floyd looked stunned, her confidence suddenly evaporating. Megan's calm demeanor betrayed none of the turmoil she must have felt. Instead, she addressed the room with quiet authority. "Ladies and gentlemen," Megan continued, "I apologize for the confusion earlier. I am Megan, Henry's wife, and the co-founder of this company. While Henry has played a significant role in its growth, I have been equally involved behind the scenes, managing our operations and ensuring our values remain intact." Henry felt the ground shift beneath him. Megan wasn't just aware of his betrayal. She had positioned herself to reclaim her place in his world. The meeting ended with Megan taking the lead, her poise and intelligence leaving a lasting impression on the investors. Floyd slipped away quietly, realizing she no longer had a role to play in Henry's life. For Henry, the experience was a wake-up call. He had spent years chasing an image of success, only to realize that true success had been beside him all along. Megan's quiet strength, unwavering support, and integrity were the foundation of everything he had built. That night, Henry returned to his hotel room alone. He sat in silence, reflecting on the choices he had made and the woman he had taken for granted. For the first time in years, he saw Megan not as a hindrance, but as the partner she had always been. The next morning, Henry sought Megan out. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But if there's any chance at all, I want to make things right." Megan looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Trust is earned, Henry. It won't be easy. But if you're willing to rebuild it, I'm willing to try." A new beginning. Henry returned home with a renewed sense of purpose. He dissolved his ties with Floyd and focused on repairing his marriage. Together, he and Megan worked to rebuild their relationship and their business, this time as true partners. Henry learned that success isn't about appearances or accolades. It's about the people who stand by you, even when the world turns its back. And for the first time in years, he felt truly proud, not of his achievements, but of the woman who had made them possible. The silent architect. Megan had always been more than a quiet presence in Henry's life. She was the silent architect of his success. Behind the scenes, she had managed their finances, fostered relationships with suppliers, and negotiated deals during the early, lean years when Henry's charisma wasn't enough to keep the business afloat. But over time, her role was reduced to invisibility, a choice Henry had made, and one Megan had quietly allowed, watching him take the spotlight. She had noticed the changes in him over the years. The once ambitious young man with big dreams had grown into someone consumed by appearances and external validation. His sharp suits and tailored image became less about professional pride and more about hiding his insecurities. Megan, however, remained constant, focusing on their home and their shared dreams, even as she sensed a growing chasm between them. When the late nights and unexplained absences began, Megan didn't confront Henry immediately. Instead, she began to observe. She noticed the nervous energy in his voice when he spoke of business dinners, the quick dismissal of her inquiries, and the subtle shift in his demeanor whenever he returned home. It didn't take long for her to piece together the truth. Henry was drifting further away, tethered to a life that didn't include her. But Megan wasn't the kind of woman to let herself be sidelined indefinitely. Quietly, she began to plan, not an act of vengeance, but a reclamation of her own power and identity. She had spent years in Henry's shadow, but she was ready to step into the light, the hidden alley. Unbeknownst to Henry, Megan still held significant influence in their company. While he had taken on the role of the face of their business, Megan had quietly maintained relationships with key stakeholders. One of these stakeholders was a close friend who had introduced her to the investors Henry was so desperate to impress. It was through this connection that Megan learned of the upcoming meeting. The stakes were high, and she realized Henry intended to bring someone else, someone who wasn't her. It hurt, but it didn't surprise her. Instead of confronting him, she saw an opportunity. If Henry didn't value her, she would show him, and the investors, just how indispensable she was. Over the next few days, Megan worked tirelessly. She reviewed every aspect of the proposal, prepared detailed insights, and connected with the investors behind the scenes. They were impressed by her knowledge, her poise, and her understanding of the business's intricacies. They invited her to attend the meeting, not as a bystander, but as an equal. When Megan agreed, she did so with one condition: her involvement would remain a surprise to Henry. The investors, intrigued by her calm confidence and intrigued by the dynamic, readily agreed. Phoebe basked in Henry's attention, but even she couldn't ignore his moments of unease. Henry kept checking his phone, glancing at the itinerary, and rehearsing his pitch under his breath. It wasn't nerves about the deal. He was confident in that. It was the nagging feeling of guilt he couldn't quite shake. "Relax, Henry," Phoebe purred, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "We've got this." Henry forced a smile, trying to drown out the echo of Megan's voice in his mind. She had wished him luck, as she always did, but this time, there had been something in her eyes, something he couldn't place. It was almost as if she had known. The revelation. When Henry and Phoebe entered the conference room, the air buzzed with anticipation. The investors were seated at the far end of a polished mahogany table, their expressions composed. Henry greeted them warmly, introducing Phoebe with practiced ease. "And this," he said with pride, "is my wife, Phoebe. She's been instrumental in shaping our vision." The male investors nodded politely, but the female investor's gaze lingered on Phoebe for a moment longer. There was no animosity in her expression, only a quiet amusement that Henry couldn't quite decipher. "Charmed," she said, her French accent lending her words an air of elegance. "But before we proceed, I believe there's someone else who deserves to be part of this discussion." Henry blinked, confused. "I'm sorry." The doors behind him opened, and Henry turned to see who had entered. His heart stopped. It was Megan. She walked into the room with quiet confidence, dressed in a tailored suit that radiated professionalism. Her hair was neatly pinned back, and her eyes were calm but piercing. She exuded an aura that made everyone in the room sit up straighter. Henry's mouth went dry. "Megan, what are you doing here?" Megan offered a polite smile, addressing the investors rather than Henry. "I apologize for the surprise, but as co-founder of the company, I felt it was important to be part of this discussion. After all, the decisions we make today will shape our future." Phoebe shifted uncomfortably, her usual confidence evaporating. Henry, meanwhile, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Megan wasn't just present, she was commanding the room in a way he had never seen before. The true partnership. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that Megan was far more prepared than Henry. She spoke with authority about their business model, addressed potential risks with thoughtful solutions, and impressed the investors with her strategic vision. The female investor, who had been reserved during Henry's presentation, leaned forward, fully engaged in Megan's insights. "Your approach is refreshing," she said with a nod. "It's clear you understand not just the numbers, but the people behind them." Henry sat in silence, grappling with a mixture of admiration and shame. He had underestimated Megan for years, and now he was witnessing her brilliance in full force. She wasn't the quiet, timid woman he had dismissed. She was a powerhouse. When the meeting ended, the investors expressed their enthusiasm for the partnership. Megan had not only salvaged the deal but elevated it. As the investors left, the female investor paused beside Henry. "Charm is fleeting," she said softly, "but true partnership endures. Remember that." The aftermath. Henry and Megan stayed behind in the empty conference room. The silence was deafening. "Megan," Henry began, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say. Megan met his gaze, her expression calm but resolute. You don't need to say anything, Henry. Actions speak louder than words. Henry nodded, tears welling in his eyes. For the first time, he saw Megan for who she truly was, not just his wife, but his equal, his partner, and the foundation of everything he had achieved. I don't deserve your forgiveness, he said quietly. But if there's any way to fix this. Megan interrupted him with a gentle but firm voice. Trust isn't repaired overnight, Henry. It takes time, and it takes honesty. If you're willing to rebuild, I'm willing to try. Henry nodded, a glimmer of hope piercing through his shame. He had a long road ahead, but for the first time in years, he was ready to walk it, one step at a time. A journey of redemption. The flight back home was a stark contrast to the one that had brought Henry and Fuyi to the meeting. The once confident businessman sat quietly, lost in thought, his tailored suit feeling more like a costume than a second skin. Fuyi had left abruptly after the meeting, realizing her role in Henry's life had come to an end. Now Henry was alone, truly alone, for the first time in years, and it terrified him. Megan's words echoed in his mind. Trust isn't repaired overnight. It takes time, and it takes honesty. He had spent so long chasing a hollow version of success that he'd forgotten what real partnership and love looked like. The memory of Megan's calm, commanding presence at the meeting was a stark reminder of all he had taken for granted. As the plane descended, Henry resolved to make amends. But he also knew that words wouldn't be enough. Megan deserved action, and he was determined to prove that he could be the man she had once believed in. The first few days after their return were strained. Megan was polite but distant, her interactions with Henry limited to necessary conversations about their business. She had moved into the guest room, a silent but clear boundary that left Henry feeling the depth of her disappointment. Henry decided to start small. He began by showing up at home earlier than usual, forgoing late-night meetings and social events. He asked Megan about her day, genuinely listening to her thoughts and ideas. When she mentioned an initiative she had been working on to expand their company's community outreach, he volunteered to help, surprising her with his newfound interest in something that didn't immediately promise financial gain. One evening, as they sat across the table from each other in silence, Henry mustered the courage to speak. Megan, he began, his voice trembling slightly. I know I've hurt you deeply. I can't erase what I've done, but I want to try to rebuild what I've broken. I miss us. The real us. Megan looked at him, her expression unreadable. After a long pause, she said, Actions, Henry. Let's see if you mean what you say. A partnership rekindled. Megan's words became Henry's mantra. He threw himself into their business, not as a solitary leader, but as a true partner. He sought Megan's input on every major decision, respecting her insights and deferring to her expertise in areas where she excelled. For the first time in years, they worked together, not just as co-founders, but as a team. The changes weren't limited to work. At home, Henry made a concerted effort to rekindle their relationship. He began cooking dinners, something he hadn't done since their early years of marriage. He planned quiet evenings where they could talk, laugh, and rediscover the connection they once had. Megan, though cautious, began to notice the shift. The arrogance that had once defined Henry's demeanor was replaced with humility. He no longer dismissed her ideas or took her support for granted. Slowly, the walls she had built around her heart began to crack. The test of commitment. Months later, an opportunity arose that tested Henry's newfound dedication. Another major deal was on the table, this time with an international corporation known for its rigorous negotiation process. The meeting was scheduled in Paris, and it was clear that the stakes were high. The old Henry might have seen this as an opportunity to shine alone, or worse, to repeat his past mistakes. But the new Henry was determined to do things differently. Megan, he said one evening as they reviewed the proposal together, I want you to lead this meeting with me. Your vision and expertise are what got us here in the first place. We'll face this as equals. Megan looked at him, searching his face for any sign of insincerity. Finding none, she nodded. "All right, Henry. Let's do this." A moment of triumph. In Paris, Megan and Henry walked into the conference room side by side. The setting was grand, the air charged with anticipation. But unlike their previous meeting, Henry wasn't focused on appearances. He was focused on the substance, the ideas, the strategy, and the partnership he and Megan had rebuilt. Together, they presented their proposal, seamlessly complementing each other's points. Megan's calm, analytical approach balanced Henry's charisma and energy. The investors were impressed, not just by their business acumen, but by the clear respect and synergy between them. When the deal was signed, Henry felt a wave of emotion he hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't just a victory for the company. It was a victory for their partnership, their marriage, and the journey they had embarked on together. The road ahead. Back home, Henry and Megan stood in their kitchen, a bottle of champagne open on the counter. For the first time in years, there was a sense of ease between them, a feeling that things were finally as they should be. "To us," Henry said, raising his glass. "To second chances and building something real." Megan clinked her glass against his, a small smile playing on her lips. "To partnership." As they sipped their champagne, Henry felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had nearly lost everything that mattered, but Megan's strength and resilience had given him the chance to redeem himself. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be without challenges, but for the first time in years, he felt ready to face them, because he wasn't facing them alone. A legacy of love. Over time, Henry and Megan's story became an inspiration to others in their industry. They were no longer seen as just successful entrepreneurs, but as a testament to the power of partnership, resilience, and redemption. Their journey wasn't perfect, but it was real. And in the end, it was their imperfections, the lessons learned, the trust rebuilt, and the love rediscovered that made their story worth telling. Because true success, they realized, isn't about appearances or accolades. It's about the people who stand beside you, believe in you, and help you become the best version of yourself. Months turned into years, and Henry and Megan continued to rebuild their life together. Their marriage, once fractured by deceit and neglect, became stronger than it had ever been. Through patience and perseverance, they rediscovered the deep love and respect that had first brought them together. Henry learned to appreciate Megan not for who she made him appear to be, but for who she was, a woman of wisdom, kindness, and quiet strength. Megan, in turn, learned to hold Henry accountable, while also allowing him the space to grow into a better version of himself. Their partnership, both personal and professional, became a reflection of mutual trust and unwavering support. The ripple effect. Their renewed bond didn't just transform their lives, it influenced those around them. Their employees saw a shift in how Henry led the company, with integrity, humility, and a newfound commitment to fostering a collaborative culture. The once hierarchical organization became a team-driven entity where everyone's contributions were valued. Even their friends and peers noticed the change. Henry became a mentor to younger entrepreneurs, openly sharing the mistakes he'd made and the lessons he'd learned. He emphasized the importance of honesty, respect, and prioritizing meaningful relationships over superficial success. A life reimagined. One sunny afternoon, as Henry and Megan strolled through the gardens of their countryside home, Henry paused and looked at Megan. "I wasted so much time chasing what I thought success was," he said quietly. "But it was right here all along. You were my greatest blessing, Megan, and I was too blind to see it." Megan smiled, her eyes soft. "Sometimes, we need to lose sight of what matters to truly understand its value. What's important is that you found your way back." Henry nodded, his heart full of gratitude. He had learned that true success wasn't measured by wealth, prestige, or appearances. It was found in the relationships that anchored him, the integrity that guided him, and the love that gave his life meaning. The story of Henry and Megan carries a universal truth. Relationships are the foundation of a meaningful life. Success achieved at the expense of love, trust, and respect is hollow and fleeting. True fulfillment comes from valuing those who stand by us, even when we falter, and having the courage to make amends when we fall short. Henry's journey serves as a reminder that it's never too late to change, to right our wrongs, and to become better for the people we love. Megan's strength and grace teach us that forgiveness, while difficult, can pave the way for profound transformation when paired with genuine effort. In the end, their story is not just about redemption, but about the power of partnership, the beauty of resilience, and the enduring strength of love. And so, as Henry and Meghan walked hand in hand toward their future, they carried with them the most valuable lesson of all. Life's greatest successes are built not with wealth or power, but with love, trust, and the courage to grow together.